Dear friends, 2 years ago, just before the summer of 2016, I had a conversation with an older student who said to me, "You have to promise me that you never stop smiling and that you never lose that passion inside of you. Remember, the joy of the Lord is your strength." I promised him that I wouldn't. At that moment, my life was amazing. It was in my first year of studying theology at the ETF. I was making new friends, experiencing late nights and student life, and even the exams could not stop me from being happy. And at that moment I thought, heck no, I'll never stop smiling. This is a promise I can keep. Throughout the last 2 years, however, I have seen that the life of discipleship is not always so straightforward. The joy of the Lord can still be there somewhere, but I realized soon enough that other things can easily push that joy away. Maybe I can even say that it is rare to experience only joy without nuance. I have discovered that there are lots of things that can challenge your joy, and that it can be tough to get back on that high that you once felt in the beginning. Perhaps getting back on that high should not be the end goal or aim of Christian life. I started to think about the promise that I made. Did that promise have anything to do with real-life discipleship? If so, what do we do when our joy becomes mixed with pain? I think that Mary of Magdalene teaches us something about this. Today we read a passage in Matthew where we meet someone who definitely experienced a joyful high in her life. We meet Mary of Magdalene. In Luke 8, verse 2, we read that Mary of Magdalene had 7 demons driven out of her. Her life turned around radically when she met Jesus. She experienced his healing firsthand. He gave her a new life by casting out her demons. It must have been so freeing to no longer have them dominating her everyday life. And the experience with Jesus was so powerful that she decided to follow him from that moment on. However, Mary of Magdalene did not just experience joyful times after her healing. In Matthew's Gospel, she is introduced as one of the many women present at the crucifixion. It says many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to take care of his needs. Among them were Mary of Magdalene. She was there in that extreme moment of pain and loss. She was standing next to his Savior. She was there when her healer died on the cross. The disciples ran off, and Joseph left after he rolled the stone in front of the entrance. But the text tells us that Mary of Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting in front of the tomb. They remained. They lingered with their pain. The words of Psalm 143 came to mind when I pictured Mary of Magdalene sitting there, thinking about all the special moments she shared with Jesus. All the moments where she knew that he was her Savior. Verse 5 and 6 say, "I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the work of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land." These words might hit home for you. Clouds may have overshadowed your joy. And sure, there have been moments where you saw Jesus so clearly, when you heard his voice, or where he could comfort you like nothing else. But right now, life is so hard, and the seeming absence of God in your life can be so painful. Yesterday, we gathered to honor the life of Nikki. We reflected on the joyous gift of her life in the midst of the painfulness of her absence. And to remember is to hold these two emotions in tension. What stood out to me in the story of Mary of Magdalene is that her life of discipleship was characterized by the existential conflict of consolation and desolation, comfort and distress. It is not unusual for desolation and consolation to be intertwined. We see that when Mary of Magdalene comes into contact with Christ, the Christ of suffering and crucifixion, who is at the same time the risen Christ who will make everything new, she experiences joy and fear at once. The next day, when an angel appears to Mary Magdalene and tells her that Jesus has risen, the text says, "So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples." Afraid yet filled with joy, consolation and desolation. The past month has been incredibly challenging for me, and I could not find the consolation that I was looking for. I felt paralyzed, and I did not know how to move forward in the chaos of my own emotional, spiritual life. But life went on, and I had to keep going. And when preparing this sermon, I was looking at Mary Magdalene as an example of what it is to be a disciple of Christ when I did not know the answer anymore. I saw that her strange and confusing mix of emotions did not stop her from listening to Christ's instructions. She runs away to tell the disciples the good news that Jesus saves. Jesus is risen, and there is a future, however confusing and complex it may be. I pray tonight that we will follow Mary Magdalene all the way to the tomb and meet Jesus there and wait for his message. The joy of the Lord was her strength, and may it be ours as well.